I'll mute myself now.
Okay.
So is Alison joining as well? Well, that's the next one, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Big hand, Susanna.
How are you both? You okay?
Yeah, we're back.
It's a beautiful day again, isn't it?
It's gorgeous. It does help it. It does help that, thank God, the weather's been like this week as we all readjust.
Yes. Have you just seen the announcement?
That Boris has got it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good news, isn't it? Well, no, I should be kind to my fellow
Be kind.
humankind. Be kind.
Be kind.
Mm.
Yeah, but he's going to carry on leading the country, so we're all right.
So you're going to show it from your end, aren't you? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
as long as everything works.
Okay, colleagues, I think we're all back. I'm going to just take over with the facilitation of the next few presentations to help out Lou and give you a little bit of a break for a few minutes. But Lou, please do feel free to come in and chip in and contribute any further points as we're going through. So I'd like to take this wonderful opportunity to introduce our colleagues, Sue Keenan and Susanna Brandon from Myerscough College, who have been on this journey with us on the Advanced Practitioner Programme over the last 2 years, actually. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to them, and they're going to be talking about how we can make a real and lasting change in organisations and what they've been up to. So over to you, Sue, and I think you're going to play this from your screen. You're sharing screen, so watch this space.
Yeah, thanks, Poonam. Yeah, Susanna and I did a bit of a voiceover PowerPoint yesterday. You'll hear at the end why Susanna sounds like she's in a hole, but hopefully this will work. So I'll play it now.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Sue Keenan. I'm
Is that okay?
Director of Quality and Performance at
Are you able to
Myerscough
turn the
College.
volume up at all?
Turn it up a little bit.
Putting this presentation together with my
That's better.
Susanna. Do you want to say hi, Susanna?
Could you turn it up a little bit more? It's not loud enough.
It's at maximum on my PC.
And so what we're going to do this morning is I'm going to set the scene about sort of change, real and lasting change in organisations from a leadership and management point of view, and putting the structures in place. And then Susanna is going to take that forward into what happens in her role as a teaching and learning coach. So I have been at Myerscough for a few years. I worked as a lecturer in teacher education at Myerscough, and then I went and worked elsewhere for 12 months at a local university, and then I came back as head of teaching and learning before becoming director of quality. And when I came back,
Sue, if it's possible to turn it up, please.
It's on max on my PC, Poonam.
Okay.
So that teaching and learning could thrive. So the things that we have done at Myerscough College was changing the observation process, moving from advanced teaching practitioners to teaching and learning coaches, and increasing the management focus on teaching and learning. So I'm going to talk about those during the rest of this presentation. For many years, Myerscough College have had a graded observation process, and probably I won't be telling you, colleagues around the country, anything particularly new when I tell you about the stresses that this caused our teaching staff. For my trainee teachers, it was a cause of huge stress. For teachers across the college, it was a cause of huge stress, no matter how experienced they were. And in terms of thinking about our staff well-being and actually our development of staff, it really wasn't helpful. Obviously, staff felt very judged by that grade. It was like a brand that was with them for the majority of that teaching year, and it really stifled development rather than supported development, because if somebody had had an amazing lesson and got that grade 1 or grade 2, then they felt justified and they were fine to carry on. If it hadn't gone so well for somebody, they got a grade 3 and they were just in continual repeating of observations, and it was really stressful and not helpful, and fundamentally not helpful to learners, I think, at the end of the day. So I very much started my new position at Myerscough wanting to get some change to that observation process. It wasn't easy to achieve in the organisation, and part of the reason for that is that management love metrics. I'm a senior leader, and as managers we have metrics that report to governors, and there's the whole argument about if you can measure it, you can manage it, and it took a lot of persuading colleagues in the organisation that we needed to change, and it wasn't an easy process. And I was lucky that we had a new VP who was very supportive of the change, and it went to governors as a supportive change. And of course, probably what really helped was the fact that Ofsted don't do any graded observations. I mean, we know Ofsted's moved on completely now into the world of deep dives, and so that change came through. And what it left us with was an alternative system where individual teachers have 3 unannounced 20-minute observations a year, and they are generally with the same observer, and that observer is also a subject specialist in their area, so that they can check on the subject specialist knowledge and the subject specialist pedagogy that's being used in teaching. And it's very much about a reflective development process, and I know that that was already in place about trying to make that process far more reflective and developmental, but that grade I think was still a barrier to sort of a true reflective process. And so now it's not perfect, but it's so much better, and staff have already said feedback has been like they feel that their teaching practice has got better as a result of the change, and that it feels far less judgmental, and they are able to have a professional reflective conversation with an observer and then look at what they want to do to improve. So that's been a huge structural change from the leadership team of the college. We've also improved the peer observation process. We very much encourage our teaching staff to go and see each other, even if it's just for 20 minutes. I always call it just being like a professional magpie. You go and steal something out of somebody else's nest, because normally, you know, all the good practice we do, we've generally seen it somewhere else and stolen it from somebody else. So that's the thing for all teachers to do, is to get that different perspective, some new ideas, and refresh their practice. The second structural change that we've made over the past 12 months has been quite painful, in all honesty, but I know it's been the right change, where we've moved from having a number of advanced teaching practitioners across the college who've been aligned with their departments to 2 teaching and learning coaches who are more substantive posts, where they have 3 days on teaching and learning coach activity and 2 days teaching in their subject specialisms to maintain their credibility as teachers. I'm conscious as a manager that it's hard to keep telling teachers about teaching when you're not seen to be doing it yourself. So I see that it's really important for myself to do teaching, and I still support with teacher education, but I know that I should be in the classroom more. And that's something for me to develop. So as over the years our ATPs had perhaps left areas and the college in these current financial challenges couldn't replace them, and so we had a bit of an inequitable system of advanced teaching practitioners where some departments had brilliant ATPs, but then some big departments with large numbers of students didn't have any teaching and learning support. So, as I say, the restructure was quite painful for all of those people involved. But we have got a really positive outcome that we've now got 2 new teaching and learning coaches in place, and it's quite new. It's taken a long time to get this process agreed and through, but they are now able to have a cross-college teaching and learning focus. And I know that Susanna is going to tell you about a lot of the activities that she and her colleague Rachel are doing later in the presentation. I think one of the key aspects of organisational structures that need to be in place is that there needs to be a management focus on teaching and learning, and I very much see that as my role now as a senior leader in the organisation to ensure that that focus is on the agenda. So it's my responsibility to make sure that at senior leadership team meetings that there's talk about teaching and learning and how we are delivering things across the college, and the TLCs now work as part of the quality team rather than in their individual departments. And so that means we've got a much more centralised overview. So, for example, if we have a EV report, an awarding body report that comes back in and sort of has some challenges with some of the work that's been produced, then we can deploy the teaching and learning coaches to support a particular area if they need some more training with formative assessment, for example. So having that centralised approach that then is fed through myself, through the college management group, through senior leadership team, and then ultimately through to governors, through governors' reports, just keeps that organisational approach on teaching and learning. Because you know, we're in times where colleges are very much led by financial situations. A lot of conversations are about sort of day-to-day financial management. So as I say, it's very much my responsibility to keep it focused on the teaching and learning, because fundamentally we're all here because we want to support students, and we want to support students to achieve and enjoy their learning. And if our students aren't enthused, well, they can't be enthused unless our teachers are enthused. And that's very much having created the TLC roles. It's about those people being critical to maintaining staff morale and well-being and enthusiasm for teaching. And I think a key aspect about keeping the management focus on teaching and learning is that as a manager, it's my responsibility to create the spaces for teaching and learning to happen. So I have to create CPD opportunities. I have to get timetable for CPD opportunities, because creating that spaces enables the thinking to take place and the reflection to take place. And so I would really thoroughly suggest that all people who are involved in managing teaching and learning, giving people space to think is really valuable time. And sometimes as colleges, we're busy trying to shove an activity into every single gap in a timetable that we've got, but creating those spaces, and we've started doing work, you know, with Lou and with Susanna about the thinking environment, is really important, and like enabling people to reflect on what they're doing and their practice. So that's really some of the organisational structures, and I'm going to hand over now to Susanna to talk about what she's actually doing now that those structures are in place.
Hi, so you're back with Susanna, and as I said, I've recently changed role at Myerscough College from post practitioner within the Department of Green Space and Community Studies, and now college. So just to add a little bit of context and to talk about how I got involved with the project. over the last 12 months, I've been involved myself directly in Constellation B. I was a relatively new ATP at the time and came to the project as an indirect beneficiary sort of partway through. So I thought it was important to go back to the beginning of B so I could complete that full journey. And also, of course, working alongside Sue, I'm also an indirect beneficiary of Constellation C and have been involved in the activities that put on and things that have been associated with Constellation C project. So, from personal point of view, the support I found from the project is first and foremost the bringing together of like-minded people. Particularly liked the way we described it as people that aren't quite yet jaded. And I thought that really hit home. It was, you know, people that still have hope that we're doing a great job in FE and that want to really be recognised for the work we do and really support learners to be that's the first and foremost is the bringing together of like-minded people. On top of that, obviously, we've visited and also hosted delegates from other educational settings, which I found really fascinating, comparing, sharing practices with other organisations. What I found really is that this type of collaboration really has the influence to inspire and motivate colleagues, myself, to try new strategies. I was always keen after a meeting, whether it be face-to-face or by Zoom, really excited to get back to the team and share the ideas with digital skills together, with thinking environment. And I think, just to sum up in a nutshell, I found my people, I found my voice, and I used it to share. Okay, so in terms of being part of the project and in my original ATP role, I introduced a team time, which was a designated half an hour, 45 minutes every fortnight in place of the weekly team meeting, and it was purely focused on teaching and learning. We utilised a thinking environment to aid fresh thinking in a concise, fair and supportive setting, and our colleagues really took.
Susanna, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we definitely having a problem with your audio there.
Do you just want me to stop it? Or
everybody got a chance to speak.
I think you're probably going to have to speak to it.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
So if we can go back to the slides, and Susanna, if you can speak to the slide, I think that's going to be the best option for us.
okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Just bear with me. I need to try. Right, how do I turn off the automatic playing now of the annotation on the slide?
Can you share just share your screen again? Ollie, are you there? I don't know if Ollie.
Don't worry.
Can you help me with this? Because I'm not a PowerPoint person.
If I just do it like that, can you hear it now?
No.
So if I just show you the slide like that, which one were you up to, Susanna?
Oh, I think we're probably okay, Ollie. Thank you.
Yeah, we're okay.
So you did that
Yes,
one, you did that one.
Could we just go back a slide, if that's okay?
The first one?
That would be really, really helpful if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
no
Thank
problem,
you.
No problem. So I was explaining that, just to put into context how I got involved in the project originally. I was a relatively new ATP, and although I had been indirectly connected with the project from the beginning with Steph, I joined at a point where I hadn't got the full picture. So I thought it was really important to go back and start at the beginning of the journey of Constellation B. So that's how I got involved. Obviously then we had a change of structure. Sue was brought into Myerscough, and she took over the reins and progressed with the first year of the project. So I've kind of been running in parallel a little bit between B and C. And just personally, what that has done for me is brought together like-minded people all working towards that positive change. So I think it was breaking up when I used Lou's analogy of the first day in the room. She mentioned that we were all people that weren't jaded, and I thought that really resonated. Was people that were still positive about the change that we can make in FE and the great job that we're doing, and I knew that I'd found people that I wanted to work with, work together and carry on that improvement journey. So as part of both B and C constellations, we've visited a range of educational settings, got to share and compare good practice. That's been fascinating. And that kind of collaboration's inspired and motivated. I think I said to Lou one day, I don't know what people thought about me coming back on the train from the AP meeting in Birmingham when we all met. So I must have had a grin from ear to ear like the Joker. Couldn't wait to get back to college and share all that information with the team that I was working with at the time. So as an AP, like Sue said, I was working with a vocational area at the time that was green space and creative studies. So everything that I brought back from the meetings and the collaborations, whether they be on Zoom or in Birmingham at the face-to-face events, that had all been shared out with the team, with the hope that the wider college would eventually, you know, take that on board as well. So that's what we're working towards. So yeah, just put at the bottom of the slide there, found my people, found my voice, and started to use it to share. So it really boosted my confidence. Okay, so the positive impact on teams, as I've said, has just been immeasurable. They really took on board all the new technology, all the digital skills and the thinking environment. We introduced team time, which is about 30 to 45 minutes once a fortnight, purely dedicated to talking about teaching and learning, which was just brilliant. It improved communication and improved mental well-being, which is something that was really important, something that Sue touched on earlier in the presentation with, I did a brief questionnaire at the end of a term when the observation process had changed, and over 80% had said that as a direct result of the developmental process rather than the judgmental process, that had an absolute positive effect on the mental well-being, which is just fantastic. Okay, so we've, as you've heard, we've changed the structure of the teaching and learning. So we've gone from ATPs to teaching and learning coaches. So there's two of us in post, myself and my colleague Rachel, who comes from a general education background. She's an English teacher. So between us, we've got a range of different skills that we can bring to the post. And we're very new in post. We were only brought in about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think. It seems like an absolute lifetime ago with all the things that are going on at the moment. But in terms of what we are hoping to do, it's support all teaching and learning with particular concentration on new teacher induction. So we noticed that there were a little bit of lack of parity between the support that new teachers were getting, as some areas did have that ATP support and some areas unfortunately at the time didn't. So we're hoping to bring that in line, tighten up that process and make sure that all new staff get a fantastic, supportive, welcoming experience as they join the college. We're developing CPD, so remits have changed over the last few days, obviously. We were looking at developing CPD initially on site and concentrating on areas that of importance at the time, which has absolutely all gone out the window now, as we obviously all put in measures to support teaching staff maintain that communication and good health from the homework setting. And then obviously the coaching, which is really important to empower teaching staff to develop their own resilience and their own expertise and think outside the box and develop their own practice. Okay, so in terms of what we're going to do next, how we're going to do it, we're going to continue to develop the strategies that have been effective in our own individual teams. So as I've already mentioned, my old team, Green Space and Creative Studies, were a fantastically close team. They took on board everything with aplomb. Supported experiments was something that we, everybody engaged with. All teaching staff have always been able to identify within their own practice things that they need to improve and put those measures in place to improve them. What we don't always concentrate on is the end result and the impact. So it's about tightening up and closing that circle. So we've done some great stuff in supported experiments. Some really exciting resources have been developed, from VR down on the golf courses, VR in floristry wholesalers. We've had our florists out pricing fresh plant materials from the comfort of the classroom. So it's been great giving students the opportunity to see the industry and close that gap as well. So that's something that we would like to continue to push out across college, because having that team and as an example of, you know, a team where they can see the benefit, that puts us in a really strong position. Improve communication across the college. So just this Monday we introduced the Teaching and Learning Coach Times, the TLC Times. It's just a bit of a magazine, I suppose, weekly. It's got a little bit of current news, digital tip, wellbeing tip, and we're hoping that staff will feed into that and make it a meaningful resource to them. But it's just, again, to capture everybody and bring us all a bit closer together and you know, just keep everybody in the loop. Develop more cross-college collaboration, I've already mentioned, to enhance both our colleagues and obviously the learner experience. Sue quite correctly said earlier that, you know, if our tutors aren't enthused and motivated and excited about what they're teaching, how can our learners have that fantastic aspirational experience? So that's really a key point, is keeping that momentum and that positivity, that we're all in this together and we can all help each other. And then last but not least, to maintain the links with the other colleges, other educational settings, and continue to practice the positivity that we've all had to adapt to in this digital world we find ourselves in.
That was a thank you from us, and thank you, Susanna, for just kind of doing it.
Brilliant, excellent. Wow, what a journey you've been on. It's been phenomenal. I mean, you've introduced so many new concepts, and I can see that colleagues have been putting comments in, and some of you have actually mirrored some of the practices that have occurred at Myerscough in terms of operating with the ungraded observations, using the teaching triangles, etc. However, what I'd like to now do is to take the opportunity, first of all, to thank you both for sharing that with us. We had some questions that came up on the chat pane previously. So if I can start with a question that Angela Murray had around how do you report the data if they are only peer observed? So Susanna, if you'd like to respond to that.
Okay, so yeah, we couldn't get away from all the metrics as much as I would have loved to get away with all the metrics. I had to kind of meet halfway, really. And so we've basically got, when the observer has the observation with a member of staff, then they have that reflective conversation. There's no discussion there about any grading expected standards. However, when the form come back to the quality office, myself and my colleagues will review the feedback on that form, and then we make an internal judgment of, from what we've seen on that form, did that feedback, does that lesson, does it meet the expected standards of the college? And I've got a really broadly bland definition of expected standards, which is basically that teaching and learning was taking place for learners in that classroom. The only time where we've said any of them haven't met expected standards is when the list of weaknesses includes things like severe health and safety risks and concerns or safeguarding implications. So in very few occasions have I judged that from that formal lesson has not met expected standards, but basically I then calculate the percentage of met expected standards and the ones that didn't meet the expected standards, so I can report that through to colleagues in SLT and the governing body, because they desperately needed some kind of metric. However, we've tried to get shot of any mention of metric in that professional conversation. I think that's right, Susanna, don't you?
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit about peer observation. So we've on the system, we've got a self CPD reporting portal. So anyone that goes out just ad hoc anytime, does some CPD, whether it be in industry, vocationally linked or education linked, whatever it is, we can record that individually, and it just gives us a little box underneath with a reflection of what impact that will have on your teaching. So that's what we do for the peer observations. That is a kind of a self recorded.
Thank you. Just really quickly, do you find that some staff might be a little biased? How do you mix them up? Do you like do across areas, or do people stay within their own teams?
Well, we made the decision to stay within their own team, because even though that, so I could observe a lesson in veterinary nursing, for example, and I could give reflective coaching questions about the teaching and learning methodology, but I don't actually know if what they are telling those students is correct or not, and I don't really know if the level of challenge is at the right level for those learners. So we've got the observers tend to be within the team so that they can focus on that development of subject specialist pedagogy. But I think my challenge with observation is that it's always going to be subjective. It's never going to be purely objective, because we all see things through our own lenses. You know, my background was teaching English, so I'm always looking in there for like opportunities to exploit English. So I think it's always impossible to have it objective, really.
But I think different subject specialists can add some. So you say, you know, Sue comes from an English background, and I think what it does now is it opens up the opportunities for some meaningful conversations, rather than it, you know, you've done this and you know you missed this and you missed that. It's if you've noticed something, then you can turn it around and perhaps ask how you could see that developing, or what you would do in a certain situation, and it just opens the conversation up a little bit.
Excellent, that's really good stuff. Nikki Hawkins offered some feedback that they're doing something similar as well in terms of monitoring that data. Nikki, not wishing to put you on the spot, I just wondered whether you wanted to add anything in terms of your practice. Okay, that's fine if there isn't. Okay, so let's move on to some other questions that we've had coming in. The next one was around the implementation of the team time, which has been really fantastic by the sounds of it. And there was a question around, is this team time for every department?
Okay, so it was something that I introduced in my own department initially, but again, something that we will be looking at rolling out across college as and when we get back to some semblance of normality. So it is something that I've been working on since the start of the AP Constellation B, so back in March, around March was it? So that's I've been working with that since then, and that's worked really well. So I would like to see it go across departments.
And I think, just to chip in, that was one of the reasons, you know, thinking about organisational structural change in organisations, that we had an inequitable model where some departments had brilliant advanced practitioners doing great things, but a lot of departments weren't getting any teaching and learning support. So we were very conscious that that needed to change, and which has kind of fueled the restructure that we've been through, where we've moved from the advanced practitioner role to the teaching and learning coach role. And I know this project is all about advanced practitioners. However, I think maybe as a term, sometimes that's a little bit loaded, that it sounds like these people are better than other people. And so the teaching and learning coach sort of feels like a title that that is about supporting colleagues and supporting development, really. So I think that, well, as Susanna mentioned, she's doing lots of like supporting virtually at the moment, and our teaching and learning coaches are sort of on hand for all teachers across the college, that they can Skype in, have a one-to-one, have a professional conversation while we go through this weird time that we're in.
Brilliant. Okay,
Can
so
I Sorry, can I just, it was my question, can I just ask about, is it a teaching and learning coach that runs the team time, or is that just done within department?
It was within departments initially. That's how I've been running it. But since obviously this new role is very much in its infancy. We've only gone through the restructure in the last month. So it is something that I will be looking at rolling out across campus as and when we're able to do so.
From my point of view, it would be about the teaching and learning coaches working with the heads of area to help them manage that within their team. So we cascade that model around, and then mantra's always a bit push the open doors, work with the people that you want to work with. And there's a lot of heads and a lot of teachers that are really much more bought into it. So we will be pressing that domino and getting it rippled across the college.
Excellent, brilliant. Now, Oliver, you had a question linked to this as well. You were saying that lots of your teams work part-time, and it can be quite hard to get a group together at the same time. How do you cope with this? And Sue, you touched on that because you talked about the use of Skype and sort of the virtual communication. Is there anything else that you're doing in terms of bringing those teams together that work part-time?
To be honest, I'm really aware there's loads of part-time lecturers that get missed out of things, and I think we'd all been a bit rubbish at it. But I think actually what we're learning through this procedure that we're doing at the moment is that we need to be utilising this a lot more to support those part-time lecturers, to have that kind of one-to-one facilitated conversation when, obviously when they're being paid is the ideal time, but there are opportunities to do things virtually to sort of support people. So I think it's something that, it's a really good point we need to do more on. If anyone else has any good tips, we'd really like to hear them.
Thank you.
That's initially, Poonam, that was why I started the weekly, it's moved now to the TLC Times, but initially it was the Green Space Gazette, and that was actually born from part-time lecturers that couldn't attend our weekly meetings. So all the announcements went onto a newsletter rather than an in-house meeting, and then the discussions led from there, and then they were fed back in the newsletter. So it wasn't perfect, but it was a form of communication.
And of course, we've also got on our Canvas site, we have a teaching excellence site, which is something that Steph started before she moved on to Barnsley. And so at the moment we're using that Canvas teaching excellence site to sort of have the central repository for training, support, development materials, so that staff can access that 24 hours a day.
Fabulous. Okay, so moving on, I'm conscious of time. So we had another question from Catherine, who said she'd be really interested in the CPD reporting portal that you mentioned.
Is Catherine there? Does she want to?
Catherine, are you able to elaborate on that for us, please?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, yes, hi Catherine. We can hear you and see you. Lovely.
Hi. So I heard you mention that you'd done something where whatever CPD staff were doing, they could there was a central place where they could log it and then put a little bit of reflection on there. We're looking at setting up something like that So I was just interested, maybe you could send me a link, or I don't know what method you're using.
Yeah, it's something.
Hello?
It's something that's set up within our intranet.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
I can't hear anybody now, I'm afraid.
I think, are you having some connectivity problems? Can other people...
Maybe if you turn your video off, Catherine, that might help.
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me
better.
now? Right. So basically, we've got an intranet portal that has like a CPD area where staff can basically upload records of CPD they've done, and as Susanna said, that they can reflect on peer observation. But it's something that's built into our intranet. But I'm happy to kind of make contact with you and sort of talk to you more about how we do that.
That sounds really good. Yeah, we're just in the process of launching a little Google Sites in terms of putting a repository. Somebody mentioned of putting all of that information that's there for the staff to get hold of. So maybe we do it as part of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you
fine.
very
Thanks
much.
very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. And we have another question that came in earlier that we captured, and that was again going back to your ungraded peer observations that you've talked about. And it's really good to see and interesting to see that a number of you have moved to that ungraded peer observations. But there was a question around, will your part-timers pay to undertake peer observation?
So we've got, just to be clear, we've got two systems. So we have the observation system, which is really about managers observing staff, but that's gone to a developmental model. And then peer observation is when you're nipping out of each other's classrooms. So obviously part-timers and peer observation, we don't pay people to do stuff outside the working hours, but what we would hope happens is that in the spirit of collegiality, staff will jump into somebody's lesson for 20 minutes and cover that internally, one of your full-timers, so that they can bop out and see somebody else, because we need to work together with that. You know, we work in a college structure where we haven't got any money, you know, who has? And so we're going to have to try to manage that internally, but I fully understand that part-timers need to have all the opportunities that full-time contracted people do. I don't know, Susanna, if you've managed that at all in Green Space, or... Yeah,
we have, but again, it's through goodwill. It is through goodwill. Although having said that, in the actual contracts for our part-time employed staff, there is an element of obviously holiday, sick and CPD marking time included in that overall. So, you know, it's
all-encompassing hourly rate.
Excellent.
I'm not
Okay.
HR, but I have been part-time, so I've come through the ranks. I feel like I've earned my stripes.
Brilliant. Okay, so, and there's lots of you're obviously keeping an eye on the chat. There's lots of comments coming in, other practice that's occurring linked to this as well. So we have another question from Brenda. How do APs support colleagues post observation if there were any areas for development?
Thank you. Yeah.
So again, that's a discussion, a professional discussion. It seems that definitely through the AP role, and I'm sure it will be exactly the same through the TLC role. It is because we are on the ground and we are still teaching, we are not seen as a threat in any way or judgmental in any way, and it is just purely developmental and a discussion between colleagues. So, you know, if you bring in that thinking environment, the thinking environment components, that, you know, you leave your rank at the door and you just discuss how improvements can come about naturally.
And if I can just jump in from more of a management point of view, as well as like in the previous model, it used to be, you're right, so somebody got a 3 and then basically they were observed to death until they got a 2, which was a ridiculously stressful way to put people through things. So from my point of view now, It's about if there are significant actions that need working on, and as Susanna says, it's coaching, development, CPD, it's supporting that person. If there, I guess I would have to say, if there is absolutely no change to practice, despite putting a wealth of support in, then we have to look at more formal measures with that member of staff, but that is absolutely the nth degree. The new system is about support, development, and we need staff to join with this and meet with us with it. But because we haven't got the grades anymore, sometimes somebody might just walk into the classroom, and I think it is unannounced, and so as a college we're just trying to get a feel for day-to-day practice. We don't want to see staged practice, and if somebody walks in for 20 minutes and maybe it's all gone a disaster because we're all teachers and we've all had disastrous lessons, then it's about that conversation and reflection and what happens next.
Fantastic. Brenda, does that answer what you were?
Yeah, yes, we've moved from graded to developmental, and it seems to be working, although there is resistance to change amongst certain cohorts in each area. And actually, in fact, it's interesting for me to see that I think Keenan's College has moved from having, am I right, having an AP in every subject area to having 2 at the top. Guess what? We're doing the opposite.
All right, okay.
Yeah, we've had 1, and then we've had 2 at the top, and the informal feedback from tutors is that they're up there with quality. Yes, they're still teaching, but they're doing the observations, and because there is resistance to change and fear of observations, the APs are in that unfortunate situation. So therefore we're thinking, let's just have an AP in every area and see if that breaks down this sort of pyramid structure where the APs are on top, because it's an uncomfortable place to be, which is why I'm so interested in what you're doing and would love to follow, throughout the year.
Because I think we're all feeling our way with it, really, aren't we? And for part of my rationale for the change was we had so all the APs in different areas had maybe a few hours of a week to do AP work, and I wanted more substantive posts. So the 2 TLCs have got 3 days teaching learning coach time and 2 days teaching time, which gives us 6 days capacity across, because people lost the time, and it didn't have as much impact in just a few hours as more substantive time. But definitely, Brenda, I'd really like to compare and contrast our 2 ways of doing it and see how we can learn from each other, really.
And I think the key is, it is structuring whether the AP is up there on top of the pyramid or whether they're in a subject area, which I'm glad I've heard you saying that how easily this can just become very loose and informal. And there is no parity of experience, parity of training amongst a larger team of APs. So time is money, and you need time to pay staff to attend the AP Connect conferences and constellations and so on. Time is money, unfortunately. But yeah, I definitely link in with you at the end of the next academic year and see how we're both doing. Yeah,
great.
Well, it's certainly a good opportunity to continue to collaborate. These conversations can continue. Thank you, Brenda, so much. There seems to be a bit of a theme running as well now in our chat around, this shift now to working more remotely, using the Google Classroom, using Teams. So in the as we progress into the coming weeks and months, it's going to be a changing landscape, really, in terms of how we're collaborating with our teams. Any other questions? Just conscious of time. I've got a few minutes, Lou, is that correct? Do a time check with you. You're muted, Lou.
I've managed to give myself 2. I think I managed to be in here twice somehow. Is there an echo?
No, yeah, it's okay.
I think I managed to be in Zoom twice in the same place. I'm literally, I have learned how to clone myself.
Multitasking.
I can see pictures of me all over the screen. Yeah, we've probably got another 5 minutes.
Okay, so any more questions then for Susanna and Sue in the last 5 minutes before we take a short break? Okay.
I've got a quick one. I just wondered like how your team was actually structured. So you said you had 2 TLC coaches, is that right?
Yeah.
And are they both full-time?
No, they do. Well, they're full-time positions, but they're split. So they have 3 days a week working as teaching learning coaches and 2 days in teaching. So,
right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
No problems.
Susanna,
Thank you.
Hi, Jess.
Hi, where are you? There you are. Oh, thank you so much for jumping in there and going in live. Yeah,
I know, I
really
can't feel my
appreciate
legs
that.
now.
Oh, thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay, right. I think any more questions, or we're going to go for a quick break before we come back. And before we do, Susanna, Sue, that was testing, and when you have issues with sound, and you came back and you just took it in your stride, so that was fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Right, colleagues, I think it's time for a big clap before we move on.
Definitely.
Thank you very much.
Can I just say, Tina, can I just say that if anybody wants to kind of keep in touch with me and Susanna and ask us more about what we're doing, we're both on Twitter, we're both on email, we're both on LinkedIn, stuff like that. So just please do make contact with us and, ask us anything you like.
And just to help that process, on the homepage there is a Jamboard. You can go in there. I think it's called Jamboard, but you can go in there and just jot down your Twitter handle and name, so you can pick up that way as well.
So we can keep the conversations going and keep in touch. So if we resume back now at say 1:05 to give colleagues time to take a comfort break, grab a drink, some refreshments, and then we'll be on to our session.
On the Mentimeter.
Say that again, Lynn.
Put some comments on the Mentimeter. I know we're banging on, but
yeah.
if you enjoyed this, we want to be able to do it again. We want to show.
Absolutely, and don't forget to tweet either. Otherwise, Lynn will be on your back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. She's taking
I know the nurse will be round. The code is in the chat. It is 441089. I know where you live. 441089 on Menti. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, colleagues, we'll see you back here at 1:05 then. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.